All right, folks, we have hit the 2-minute mark. Again, Deanna Cross-Palaio, Assistant Director, Crisis Communications here at Cal OES. We are looking forward to chatting with all of you today, and thank you so much for sticking with us over 3 briefings these past few weeks. We hope that they have been informative. And so today's briefing is going to be specific, going back to the winter storms thread, but talking about recovery and really how you can be trusted partners with us during this time to ensure California communities get the resources they need to recover after our winter storms. So I'm gonna ask for the next slide, please. All right, and so we're going to hear from a few different folks today, and so you will hear from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, Brian Ferguson, Bill Simonson, and then you will also hear from FEMA, Charles Craig. You'll hear from SBA2, the Small Business Administration, talking about some of those resources, Luis Santos Serrano, and then you'll hear from one of our Listos California partners, Diana Contreras, with Catholic Charities of Fresno. And then we'll talk about some of the resources available to you all. I will say we will be doing Q&A at the very end, but if you have some things now that you're curious about, put them in the chat. Happy to try to answer them in the chat, and then we can also kind of grab them toward the end as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Brian Ferguson, our Deputy Director of Crisis Communications at the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, to kind of give us a holistic view of the work that's been going on. Hi, Brian.
Thank you, Deanna, and thank you for everyone who's joining. As we kind of look forward at the work that lies ahead to help our communities rebuild and recover, we also just wanted to take a moment and thank all of you who are on this call. This is our 3rd call with community-based organizations during this disaster, and really we've done some unique things during this round of storms that we haven't done during other disasters. We have learned in recent years that truly all disasters are local, and that those trusted messengers in the community, those folks like all of you on the ground, are such a vital source of support and outreach and education, and then just community-based person-to-person support for all the folks who work on this effort every single day. And so, I just wanted to start by thanking all of you for what you've done, and please know that we remain and will be committed to working with these communities to rapidly help them rebuild and recover. In a moment, you're going to hear from Bill Simonson, who's from our Cal OES Recovery Directorate. But just as we kind of look past the overview of what this disaster looks like, one of the things we wanted to share was really the unique nature of the challenges that we face. We saw 9 consecutive atmospheric rivers pummel our state, from the Oregon border up in Humboldt and Siskiyou counties, all the way down to San Diego and Imperial County, close to the Mexico border on the south. This truly is a sign of a climate and environment that is changing, and an omen of things to come, of what the years are going to look like for additional wildfires, floods, and other disasters, and which is why it's so important that we work together as a state. We support the most vulnerable among us, who we understand are disproportionately impacted by climate change. We also want to thank you and talk a little bit about the efforts that are been underway at the state and federal level. As many of you saw, Governor Newsom requested and President Biden approved a federal major disaster declaration, which opens up assistance to our state. Currently, there are 12 unique counties who are approved for some form of assistance. 9 of those counties are approved for independent individual assistance, 9 for public assistance. And Bill will talk to you a little bit about that, what that means in a few minutes. But please know that the full weight of the state and federal government remains on helping our communities get the support that they need in the days and months to come. We understand that these disasters are not something that we're going to be able to move on from quickly, and that we are committed to working closely with all the impacted individuals and communities so that they get the help and support that they need. And truly, the work that each of you do are part of that effort. In a moment, you'll also hear from some of our CBO partners who have led the way. And, we want to provide you an example of some of the work that's happening on the ground from some of our trusted partners locally. And so we're really pleased to have them on. And These are folks that we both fund in other ways, but also just folks who have come to us and said, this is work we believe in that we want to continue to support. And so, as we leave, we want to say, whether or not you're a funded partner, you have a place with us, and we want to reach out to you if you're ever interested in partnering with Cal OES in some way, shape, or form. We're here to support that for you. We also have a new round of Listos funding published within the coming days for those who may be interested in applying. And we also have over $1 billion in grants that we push out every single year for a variety of disaster efforts that you or your organizations may be eligible for. So we're committed to providing you financial resources for the work that you do locally. Certainly these are complex and challenging disasters, and we mourn the lives of more than 21 people who have passed, but truly we are heartened by the work that all of you do locally to support one another, and we know that together we will get through this as a state and as a community of people doing work. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Deanna, and just want to thank everyone for your work and for what is yet to come going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. And just a reminder for folks, I know the chat's disabled, but hey, you can talk to us over at the Q&A section too. So feel free to put in any questions you have, and we will get to them. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Bill Simonson. He is our chief over interagency recovery coordination here at Cal OES. Sorry, I'm putting up my my title to make sure I get your title right, Bill. He's going to talk a little bit about kind of the work that we've been doing with local governments and with FEMA specific to those recovery resources. Bill?
Yeah, thanks, Diana. And good afternoon, everyone. Bill Simonson, Chief of the Interagency Recovery Coordination Branch here at Cal OES. And yeah, I'll start by sharing just a few things about our path to recovery. During a disaster, Cal OES works very closely with local governments to rapidly respond to and recover from all types of incidents. In California, we use a very specific framework called SEMS, and that's the Standardized Emergency Management System. And within that system, there are 5 levels of support. Incidents, as Brian mentioned, they all start and end locally, so they start in the field. There's local government, the operational area or county, the Cal OES regions, and then finally the state. And these levels are used in an escalating manner to help provide support to incidents as they're needed. During the onset of a disaster, Cal OES frequently deploys staff to local emergency operations centers, to the field. We do this to monitor activity, provide technical assistance, and in order to coordinate the fulfillment of unmet needs should they arise. It's important that throughout both the response and recovery, Cal OES is constantly monitoring community impacts, and if appropriate, requests additional help from the federal government for specific counties if that's needed. For the winter storms in particular, as Brian mentioned, Cal OES requested an expedited major disaster declaration for 49 counties that were impacted by the series of severe storms that hit California around the end of the year. As of yesterday, FEMA has approved 12 of those counties for inclusion in the disaster, 9 of which have individual assistance to help with local needs. I'd like to note that this event is still evolving, and it can take a long time for communities to move through that initial response phase into recovery. So as more damage assessments are completed within the impacted areas, more counties may be added to the disaster declaration for additional support. Lastly, I think it's important to just remind everybody that help is available both online and in person. Currently, we have 13 locations across the state where anyone can visit to get information on what types of aid are available and register for that assistance. The addresses, dates, and other relevant information for these local assistance and disaster recovery centers can be found on the Cal OES website. If you search for individual assistance on the homepage, it'll take you right to an online map. So additionally, you can go to disasterassistance.gov online and register there as well. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this with you today. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Deanna.
Thanks so much, Bill. I'm going to test you maybe a little bit. Do you mind telling us which are those 9 counties specific to individual assistance? If you don't have it right off the top, I have it on my phone too, so you let me know.
Oh, no, I've got it right here. So as of now, and this again is evolving and we expect it to change, Merced, Sacramento, Santa Cruz, Monterey, San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, San Joaquin, Calaveras, and San Mateo have all been currently approved for individual assistance. And as I mentioned, those assessments are ongoing.
All right, thank you so much, Bill. Now we're going to turn it over to FEMA, specifically Charles Craig, who is the Voluntary Agency Liaison Group Supervisor at the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And maybe he's going to talk to us a little bit more about maybe what IA means, and you can, and you know, how you can get those resources and support. So I hand it over to Charles now.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As was stated before, this is a federally declared disaster. And during a federally declared disaster, the governor can request various types of assistance. Individual assistance is the assistance that is provided to individuals and families. On the slide there, you see the type of programs that we have under individual assistance. It includes mass care and emergency services, voluntary agency coordination, that's what I do. Then we have a suite of community service programs, which includes disaster case management, crisis counseling and assistance and training program, disaster legal services, disaster unemployment assistance. And then our flagship program on the individual assistance is called Individuals and Household Programs, or IHP. It's already been stated that there are 9 counties that have been designated for individual assistance. They're listed there on the slide. I won't repeat that, but we are working in those counties to provide these services. Let's go to the next slide. Under individual assistance, there are different types of assistance that we can provide. We have 2 major buckets. One is our housing assistance, and then the second is other needs assistance. Under housing assistance, we're focused on getting people back into some type of shelter. We look at providing rental assistance. We also can provide temporary lodging assistance. If their primary residence has been damaged, we can provide repair assistance for that damage. And sometimes if the house is destroyed, we can give them money towards a replacement of that property. And this is has a financial cap. It's for this fiscal year 2023. That financial cap is $41,000. That financial cap will pay towards repair or towards replacement, but there are some things that we can assist with, such as rental assistance, the temporary lodging reimbursement, and items that are considered to be access and functional need type items. Those do not count against the max grant. So a person can receive those items and still have monies left going towards that maximum grant. In addition to the housing assistance, I mentioned other needs assistance. These are items that include, as you see listed there, personal property, transportation, funeral, medical and dental, child care, and miscellaneous disasters specific. One of the things about other needs assistance is that these items can have a cost share associated with them. So we work closely with the state to identify which items will be included in that. There also is what we call a financial consideration for personal property and transportation. We look at their ability to possibly have a loan with SBA. And so we will refer them to SBA before we will look at making grants in those two categories. Can we go to the next slide? So I said that the president will make a declaration that will allow for FEMA to come in and provide assistance. The way survivors are eligible for assistance, or they can start their registration process to see if they're eligible for assistance. We have several things that they can utilize. The first one listed there is our 800 number that can be called from anywhere within the country or within the state and start an application. We also have the ability for people to apply in person. They can do that at most of the state local assistance centers. They can do it also at the Joint Disaster Recovery Center. There also is an option if you have power to do things digitally. And so we have an internet site that you can go to, disasterassistance.gov. And we also have a mobile app that you can download to your phone and apply that way. When the president makes a declaration, it starts what we call our period of assistance. The date of the declaration is March 14th, January 14th. And the period of assistance runs out 18 months from that date of the declaration. So individuals have 60 days to register for FEMA, and the deadline for the 60 days will be March 16th, 2023. And the period of assistance will run out until July 15th, 2024. When people register for FEMA, we do have eligibility requirements, and general conditions for eligibility are listed there. You must be a U.S. citizen, a non-citizen national, or qualified alien. We will ask for identification. We need to verify that you actually occupy the primary residence. And we will have an inspector come out and verify that the damage to that property is disaster related. If we are able to assist with individuals who are uninsured or underinsured, and that assistance is again for disaster cost expenses and serious needs. So I think that's my last slide. I'll stop there and turn it back to you, Deanna, unless there are questions that are in the chat.
Thanks, Charles. Gosh, we have gotten so many questions, but I do want to get through maybe a few more panelists, and then we'll maybe round them all up at the end. So really appreciate your time. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Luis Santos Serrano to talk to us from the Small Business Administration about some resources available for survivors. Luis?
Thank you, Diana, and thank you, everyone. My name is Luis Santos Serrano. I am with the Small Business Administration Office of the Disaster Recovery and Resiliency. Our office is located in Sacramento, California, and I'm a public information officer. As part of the Presidential Disaster Declaration signed by our President Joe Biden, the Small Business Administration offers federal low interest disaster loan to businesses of all sizes, most private nonprofit organizations, but at the same time, homeowners and renters. So usually when people hear about SBA, small business, in a disaster declaration environment, we as well assist homeowners and renters. Businesses of any size may borrow up to $2 million. For what purpose? To repair or replace disaster property damage. When we talk about disaster property damage, the property that was impacted specifically by the winter storm, floods, mudslides that occur or start occurring December 27, 2022. The 9 counties that our colleagues already mentioned, they are eligible to apply for a federal interest physical disaster loan, federal low interest disaster loan. My apologies. For small businesses and a small business engaged in aquaculture, and most private nonprofit organizations may also borrow to help meet disaster cost working capital needs. In other words, that means that if your business is suffering economically, for example, your business needed to shut down doors for a period of time because of the floods, clients stopped coming into your shop because they didn't have access, among other difficulties that your business may have been or may, as per now, may be facing. Business may apply for a working capital loan for up to $2 million. Or if your business was impacted physically and economically in a combination, the maximum amount that you can ask is $2 million. If you're a homeowner or a renter, the first step is registering with FEMA. That's the recommendation that we always mention to all disaster survivors. And FEMA, once you register with FEMA, FEMA may refer you to the SBA. Why? Because the SBA disaster loans are the primary source of money to pay for a repair or replacement costs not fully covered by insurance or other compensations. So we always encourage everyone, if you got an insurance, start as well with the steps of recovery, contacting your insurance. Homeowners, you may ask, what is my limit? How much money may I be eligible for? For your primary residence, homeowners may borrow up to $200,000 to repair or replace that property. And for homeowners and renters, they may borrow up to $40,000 to replace personal property, including vehicles, property that was inside your place, like for example, TV that may be impacted by the floods, for example, you may apply for up to $40,000. And all those are low interest disaster loan. How low can be? For home loans, it can be as low as 2.313%. And for businesses, the interest rate can be as low as 3.305%. So what do you need to do? Very simple. Start registering with FEMA, and their website, as they mentioned before, www.disasterassistant.gov. This is the fastest way to register, but at the same time, we got multiple centers around California and all those primary counties that they mentioned before, the 9 ones, we got centers allocated there. In the case of Merced, we have one in Fairground and we have one in Planada. So always we encourage you, visit one of our centers. Is a multi-agency and local agency effort. So you may enter to that center and we encourage everyone to verify, to register with FEMA, apply with SBA, verify what kind of disaster assistance you can be provided or you may be eligible. For homeowners and renters, you should submit your SBA disaster loan application, even if you're not sure if you will need it later. Why? There's very specific point. This declaration, you may apply or you may submit your registration until March 16, 2023. So we have a deadline here. For physical damage, March 16, 2023, for all those loans that we talked about, if you lost property and your property was physically damaged. And for the economic injury, the working capital loan that we mentioned, October 16, 2023. That's the latest date. So to be considerate of the time, and for my other colleagues, let me just share with you how you can have more information. Call us to 1-800-659-2955, 1-800-659-2955, or you can visit our webpage, www.sba.gov, for more information. Thank you very much for your time, and I will pass the part back to Diana. Yeah, sorry.
No problem, Luis. So great to see you again, and thank you so much for the information. Can you, humor me just a little bit? Can you repeat the interest rates, please? We're getting a few questions, and if you don't mind, and I'll try to type it too at the same time.
No worries. Thank you. The interest rate can be as low, and the lowest part of the chart for home disaster property damage, right? For the home disaster loan, it can be as low as 2.313, 2.313%. That's the lowest that you can have for home disaster loan. And for the business physical disaster loan or working capital loan, it can be as low as 3.305%. For nonprofit organizations, our interest rate is 2.375%. These interest rates are fixed 30 years. If you submit your application and SBA is not able to offer you the loan, you may be referred to FEMA for other additional type of assistance. But how you can know if you're eligible for that, you have to follow the step. First, register with FEMA, and then apply for a federal low interest disaster loan with the SBA. If the SBA offers you a loan, you are not obligated to take the loan, but at least you know the options that you have on your hand to start the recovery process.
Thank you, Luis. All right, I'm sure there will be more questions coming in, and so we'll go to you at the end. And then without further ado, I'd also like to hand it over to my tocaya, Diana Contreras. She's a Listos, California program manager for Catholic Charities of Fresno. I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that she's doing in the community. I'll hand it over to you, Diana.
Thank you, Diana. My name is also Diana. I'm the program manager for the Medi-Cal and Listos program. Although I am based in Fresno, we have an office in Merced. And so I just wanted to share a little bit of the community perspective and what we've been doing hands-on and will continue to do with the Merced community for many months and hopefully years to come after the flood disaster that they've experienced. And so from day one, we responded by being able to provide the community with items from our food and clothing pantry. So some of the items that we saw that were most popular just because of the families being out of their homes were things like cereal, granola bars, Lunchable, crackers, and we are also very fortunate in being able to provide protein, which is not something very common that you see in food pantries. And so we are able to provide things like chicken. We did beans, tortillas, and we also delivered water all across the county. That continues to be one of our biggest requests. Jeans and shirts are also a big request from our clothing pantry. Now, these are services that we provide all around the clock, year round. Our biggest foot traffic comes from clients wanting to come in to get these items. And so really, we just made our items mobile. We are able to load our big truck and distribute this across the county. We also help other local churches that are kind enough to donate items, distribute. And so the two local churches in Merced, which is Sacred Heart and St. Vincent de Paul, have been really generous in donating pillows, blankets, and water. And so we've been helping them get that across the board. And as you all know, that Merced Fairground was deemed the disaster relief center. And so we were there present, outreaching on some of our other programs that are back in the office. Our two most popular being helping families in Merced with CalFresh enrollment and with Medi-Cal enrollment. We are able to assist them through the entire process. We've seen that a lot of these families are just feeling very emotionally overwhelmed and drained from this process and trying to figure out where they go from here. And so having a staff that can assist them through the DHCS process and sort of be their representative through that has been really helpful for them. If we can go to the next slide, please. One of the newer programs that we are ready to kick off is the Disaster Case Management Program. This is not a new program to Catholic Charities, but it is a new program in Merced. We currently have this program based out of Fresno, and we assist families that were victims to a wildfire back in 2020, which was a creek fire. This program has allowed us to hire case managers and assist these families for a little over 2 years. As we know, a lot of these disasters, these families are dealing with the consequences for many months and years after the fact. And so this program allows us to designate a case manager to the family. And we provide different services from connecting them to any resources, whether that be on the federal level, state, or local. We're able to help them appeal anything, advocate for them. We help them come up with a long-term plan. And so again, we are with them through the entire process as they get back on their feet. And so we have officially been listed as Catholic Charities as the organization that will get this program. And we actually have kicked it off officially today. Our program manager started in Merced. We are in the process of hiring our case managers, but we are already doing intake and collecting information from families in the county. And so if there's any families in Merced that want this additional help, whether that be doing paperwork for any FEMA or Cal OES resources, et cetera, that's what we're going to be here for. And so we're already brushing and combing through the community. We are not waiting for families to come into the office. We have staff out and outreaching and sharing with families about this program. If they are interested, they are filling out a very generic intake form that sort of tells us their information and what help they may be wanting. And as soon as we fill our positions with our case managers, they will come on board and already have their staff of families to begin helping. And so we're really excited about that. I think that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diana. Let's see, I think we have just a little bit more to kind of provide you guys some information, some resources, and whatnot. And so wanted to just kind of flag those for folks before we get into questions. And so if you want to also be a part, spread the word about recovery resources specific to winter storm survivors. We have them all on our website, listoscalifornia.org/recovery, specific to, the recovery of our winter storms. But then also we have a lot of really great evergreen material, because we know that the next emergency or disaster is not too far away. And so it's never too late to get prepared and ensuring that folks have what they need there. So let me look at the next slide so I can remember what the next point was. I think it goes back to the resources. And so also want to flag for you that we did a really beautiful partnership with some trusted messengers specific to Indigenous language videos. These were on preparedness, flood safety in over 12 languages. And so there's been a really profound effort there. And so if there are communities that need that support, we have that available for them as well. So I am now going to get into a few of the questions that we're seeing here. I'm going to bring up Luis from SBA to maybe answer a few of those. So there's a few questions on, do homeowners or renters have to provide information on their credit or their credit history? Can you maybe talk about that and ensuring that, you guys are working with the folks depending on their needs?
Correct. And thank you. That's a great question. Yes, because it's federal, funds that has to be repaid. There are going to be some credit requirements. One of the credit requirements will be the credit history. At the same time, credit history, of course, has to be, and let me ask you, just give me 1 second. I'm just trying to gather. Yeah, the credit history, applicant must have credit history acceptable to the SBA. At the same time, repayment. Applicant must show to the SBA the ability to repay those funds. And if in the case of that the physical loss for the loan is over $25,000, and that's why you are eligible, your your loan will be more than $25,000, SBA may require a collateral. So there's some credit requirements for this, and how that's why I always encourage everyone, let's start the process once you submit your application. An SBA specialist in our processing and disbursement centers in Texas, they will assign a case manager. That case manager will verify the different, of course, requirements that we have, and they will be able to correspond or to respond the SBA answer. If SBA is not able to offer you the loan, they will provide you an explanation in a letter, and in that letter, you will have the time frame specifically to request a reconsideration on your case. So even if you are declined for your request of a federal low interest disaster loan, you may submit a reconsideration on that.
Thank you, Luis. All right, so we have a few questions, specific to FEMA, but I might also bring in Bill at Cal OES a little bit to kind of help us out. And so I think that we have some maybe eligibility questions. And so specifically talking about those eligibility requirements, immigration status. I think we talked a little bit about maybe kind of, credit security for SBA, but bringing in Charles, maybe, do you mind kind of going over again some of those eligibility requirements specific to immigration status and, what documents need to be provided when it's regarding qualified alien criteria?
Yes, so the qualified alien criteria really is referring to someone who is a legal resident. So that's typically is a green card, and that's what they're looking for. If someone doesn't have that visa status, then they wouldn't be eligible for assistance from FEMA.
Thank you so much. And then do you mind also mentioning to it in one of the other briefings, there was a comment about maybe children that reside in the home that they could possibly be apply for assistance in lieu of the parents?
Certainly. So on the first bullet on that slide, it said that they were a legal, a U.S. citizen, excuse me. And so children that are born here in the United States, they will have citizenship. And so they are eligible for assistance. And a parent that is not a qualified alien can apply on behalf of that child who is a U.S. citizen and have citizenship and able to qualify for eligible.
Thank you so much, Charles. I see Bill has his camera on, and I might flip over to Bill a little bit. And so a few questions when it comes to specifically maybe some of the resources and how are they available in what languages. And I think maybe your expertise with local assistance centers and disaster recovery centers, and that we work very closely with the federal government on interpreters and all that good stuff, if you don't mind answering that one. But
yeah, thanks, Dana. And just one other thing on the previous question, Charles, please correct me if I'm wrong. And just to put a finer point on it, that the eligibility for assistance is determined by household. And so as long as you have an eligible applicant within the household, then the household becomes eligible for assistance. And I'll look for Charles to nod his head, but if that's helpful.
Yes, that is correct.
Awesome, thanks, Charles. And so, yeah, and then, on the language and accessibility issues, yeah, we strive to make sure that at the local assistance centers and at the DRCs, the disaster recovery centers, that we have documents that are in multiple languages, that we have, interpreters. And then you heard a story earlier, we get creative using cell phones and technology. Cal OES has staff who are trained to help people through the disaster recovery process. And so, you can always look for somebody in a black shirt, and they can help guide you through the process. And if you're having trouble communicating, can help get you to somebody who can help make that connection. So lots of people in those centers, and they're trained to help.
Thanks, Bill. And then do you mind also mentioning too, that we also partner maybe with some other state agencies or departments to provide, folks resources, including, EDD and CDPH and all that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, every disaster is different, and they all require different resources to help people recover. Wildfire looks very different than flood, and the needs are different, to a household after a disaster. But what Cal OES will do is coordinate the state family, and if there are needs that a household has, and a state agency can provide that resource, we'll bring them to the table. So even if those resources aren't available on, say, day one of a disaster, again, if you find somebody who's wearing a Cal OES shirt, we can help identify what that resource or that gap is, and we'll work to have that brought into the center. We have CDPH who will bring to the table, who can help with vital records, or if you need birth certificates, things like that, they can help with that. DMV can help with replacement ID cards, and a lot of that can be done on site. So even if there's a resource that's not available at one of these centers that you're seeing, again, if you make that known to somebody at the Disaster Recovery Center or the LAC, we'll work to make sure that we bring it to the table.
Thank you so much, Bill. Teresa, one of our San Diego partners, also had a question specific to wildfires, which we are no strangers to. And so I think a little bit of a question, I'm trying to see when exactly she asked it, but she asked, is this service also available in San Diego County when we have devastating fires? If so, does this contact begin at the local area recovery centers that the county sets up after the fires? I think kind of going back also to the resources available.
Yeah, great question. And so again, I mentioned earlier, all disasters start and end locally. And so typically what will happen is these disaster declarations sort of move up through those different levels I talked about. And so if it's a small disaster, typically a county or a city can open up a local assistance center. And if they're going to do so, then they can ask Cal OES for support, and we will bring in those state agencies as appropriate to assist. If we get to the level where we have a federal declaration like we have here, that's when we bring in FEMA and we have the disaster recovery centers. But yeah, for any disaster, it doesn't matter how big or how small, Cal OES can engage and help bring whatever stakeholders and resources we have at the state level to assist survivors.
Thanks, Bill. I'm going to ask you just a few more questions, so appreciate you being in the lukewarm seat for a second. We had a few questions specific to immigration status. I know FEMA kind of answered when it came to specifically to kind of the resources that they provide kind of there. Do you think it's also helpful for families to go either to these DRCs, these disaster recovery centers, and get information there on maybe some other state or local assistance that they could be eligible for that maybe they aren't through FEMA?
Absolutely. We have a state agency voluntary liaison that works very closely with faith-based and community-based organizations. And so typically those folks or representatives of those folks will show up in the LACs or the DRCs for assistance, and they can offer things like gift cards and all kinds of other support. So absolutely, even if a household doesn't think they're eligible for FEMA or state resources, they should show up, because there's a lot of people there who come with a myriad of resources to support survivors of all kinds.
All right, thank you, Bill. I'm going to switch it up, maybe go back to FEMA a little bit. Charles, if you have another quick second. And so let me looking here. I know that we all kind of specific, when the major disaster declaration happens, it kind of opens up a funnel of other resources for you guys. I know Bill talked a little bit about kind of unemployment assistance, but there was a few questions specifically when it comes to financial assistance available to agricultural workers who lost wages. And then also generally, maybe if you want to talk about the work that you guys do to coordinate with USDA when it comes to maybe, lands impacted by winter storms.
Sure. So we have a program called Disaster Unemployment Assistance. And that is a grant that we make available, and it is executed or implemented by the state through their normal unemployment system. So for migrant workers, if they are not eligible for unemployment assistance, they wouldn't be eligible for that. But as it was stated a moment ago, there are lots of voluntary agency, faith-based groups that will respond to disaster and recovery and bring resources to assist individuals who are not eligible for those programs. As far as USDA, they are one of our federal members, and we set up a system of assistance with them. We are in a joint field office right now, and they are here, and we work with them to implement programs like disaster nutritional assistance, DSNAP. That's something that can be turned on, and they will look at some of their other programs, disaster rural services that they can apply. So they're here, they can provide some assistance, but we just have to coordinate with them.
Thank you so much, Charles. And I think too, while you were maybe chatting and presenting your slides earlier, there's a question about transportation assistance. And is it prioritized as a loan, not a grant? Please remind me if that was during your conversation. If not, I can punt that question off to someone else.
Sure. One of the things that we look at, individuals and families, they could lose their transportation as far as like an automobile. It could be buried in mud. And so we work with the state in order to provide a grant to pay towards the replacement of that individual property that was lost. So depending on what the state has agreed upon, if people can show that that was their primary transportation and they lost it, we're able to provide a grant towards the replacement of it.
Thank you so much, Charles. Maybe one more question, and I'm trying to consolidate a few. So there have been a few housing questions, and I think as we've heard maybe in other conversations, that oftentimes emergencies exacerbate already pre-existing inequities within communities. And so there have been a few questions. I think these are specifically to Merced County, but what's available for families, let's say, that they've lost their home, and there's already kind of a housing shortage. How does FEMA work with the local community to ensure that, families have a safe place to stay?
So we will first verify that it is their primary residence. That's one of the criteria. Once we determine that, we'll have an inspector go out and assess the home and see whether or not we need to make a grant towards repair work or a grant towards replacement. We also provide rental assistance. This is something we will give survivors so that they can go out and rent another property while their primary residence is being repaired. That rental assistance can go on throughout the period of assistance. It's if there are no rental properties within the immediate area, there are other options that are available. They can go outside of that area. We may be able to have a direct housing mission where we bring in temporary housing units. All of those are options that are on the table, but have to be worked through and agreed upon with the state.
Thank you, Charles. Maybe one last question. I think folks wanted to just confirm if there is a conflict, if a homeowner has home insurance, and then do you not qualify then for help with FEMA? Sounds like it's kind of a hand-in-hand thing, but wanted to confirm with you first, Charles.
Sure. The Stafford Act, which authorizes FEMA to come in and provide assistance, also has a requirement that FEMA cannot duplicate benefits provided by another entity. So if an individual has insurance that covers that peril, that covers that loss, then FEMA can't duplicate that. So if they are insurance company, if they have flood insurance and their house got flooded, then it's the flood insurance that would take first precedence to repair the loss that they sustained.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Hey,
Okay,
real quick, Diana, just on that question though, and I would encourage people though, not to assume whether or not they're eligible for assistance and to go ahead and go through the application process. As Charles said, you know, we have to be careful. You can't duplicate benefits. But one of the unique challenges that we face here in California is that people are massively underinsured in some areas due to the unique, you know, housing situation that we have here. And so we typically just encourage people to apply. There's also an appeal process that people should follow, but don't assume that you're not eligible. Go through the process, and you may be surprised by the outcome. So,
thank you, Bill. While you're there, a few questions too in regards, and we kind of touched upon it earlier, but you know, is there additional state resources for counties that maybe aren't FEMA designated, or, you know, designated as IA or PA, that maybe the state has or local governments have resources for?
So from the state perspective, you know, most of the resources that we have come with a gubernatorial proclamation. So we do have a statewide disaster for a number of counties. And so, but most of those resources are for public assistance and for emergency protective measures. So for, you know, immediate sheltering for those whose, you know, homes are uninhabitable, and for the repair or replacement of infrastructure. But that being said, you know, if there are households who need assistance, you know, this is why showing up at the local assistance centers and the DRCs is so important, because there are, you know, a series of resources that are available, and making sure that you let folks know what those needs are is the best way to match you with those available resources.
Thank you, Bill. When I visited a disaster recovery center not too long ago, actually some of your staff was super helpful, Bill, in kind of, you know, just being around and being kind of like that connective tissue between a lot of the organizations. And so there was a little bit more of a comment, but if you want to highlight too that it is helpful, you know, if you want to be helpful at a disaster recovery center, you know, how can, you know, local organizations or groups or whatnot kind of be a part of that, and provide kind of some of those resources to survivors? Would that be kind of by contacting you guys or FEMA? You know, talk to me a little bit about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. So anybody who's interested in helping support their community, the community-based organizations do a fantastic job of helping to organize and make those resources available, right? So the local Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and others is a great place to start. If you want to go beyond that, you can always contact our individual assistance team through the Cal OES website. That's always a good resource, and they can help determine if there's a good place to plug you in. But then also the county. Again, all disasters start and end locally. Counties are often looking for volunteers, and that may just, you know, be to help out in a number of different areas during a disaster. So they're always looking for support, and so I would encourage people to start there as well.
Bill, oh, go for it.
I was just going to add that there is an organization called VOAD, VOAD, Voluntary Organizations Active in Disaster. These are organizations that respond to disasters and also recovery. There's one located in the northern part of the state called Northern California VOAD, and another in the southern part of the state called Southern California VOAD. And those are good entities to start with if they want to get involved, because we reach out to those VOADs to have them support the LACs and the DRCs. And not only do we have the North and the South, many counties will have a VOAD also. So that's something that can allow for people who aren't engaged but want to be involved, a way of getting into the system.
Thank you so much, Charles. Such a great reminder. Appreciate that information. And then Bill, you kind of mentioned something too, in regards to, folks going and getting help, in person, at these DRCs. Is it also important for folks maybe that don't feel comfortable to, go online, or they can kind of find information elsewhere, that we have kind of this aggregate of information, also available through our website, phone numbers, things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. We're constantly updating our website, Cal OES. If you search individual assistance, we have those resource centers up there, and then you can always just send an email too. And if you send an email to that team, they will connect you and start you down the path to where you can get engaged with resources, and we'll hold your hand until they get you into contact with somebody who can help you out.
Thanks, Bill. Last thing too, a few questions on, hey, was my county included? Was my county not included? Can you just mention maybe the process that, Cal OES is working with FEMA and local partners to kind of do some of those damage assessments, continued damage assessments to see if other counties could be added to individual assistance?
Yeah, absolutely. And, as I mentioned earlier, this is an ongoing event. Every event is a little different. You have to wait for areas to be safe to go into to be able to do assessments. For floods, you have to wait for floodwaters to recede. A lot of times damage isn't immediately apparent. And so it does take time for county, state, and federal teams to go in there and assess those damages. As I mentioned, those damage assessments are ongoing. And so I would expect that over the next couple of days, we will see some, additional counties show up as having additional damages, and so those will be assessed as they come in. And this could go on for the next couple of weeks. And so in terms of who's on the FEMA declaration, you can always check FEMA's website under FEMA declarations, and that'll have the map and show the counties that were approved for the federal declaration, along with the categories of assistance that were approved. And so that's the best resource for finding out that information.
Thanks so much. With that, I think we're going to have to wrap it up, and don't want to take too much more of everyone's time. But again, really recommend you going, seeing more on our resources, listoscalifornia.org. You can learn more about recovery. And so we've kind of created a bit of a virtual disaster recovery center on our website. And then also feel free to, have folks attend these disaster recovery centers in person, and you can kind of learn more about them too on our website. Feel free to always go to FEMA or SBA too if you have any other questions on their specific resources. So just to close out, how can you help? Share resources from official sources only. Want to just advocate for that, trying to do as much as we can to stop any kind of fraud or scams or misinformation. And then use your networks to share, tips, right? And so right now we're in the height of recovery mode. We know the next, emergency is probably not too far away. And so you can also have a part in creating some of this change and ensuring that we are more disaster resilient. And with that, really appreciate everyone's time, and thank you so much for joining us.